Welcome to Turmeric and Tequila with your host, Kristen Olson. Questioning a better way, one gracefully disruptive conversation at a time.
Welcome to Turmeric and Tequila. I'm so excited to be with you here today. We have a very special guest that we've been looking forward to having on in the studio and on the mic because, as you know, I have 3 rescue dogs. I'm very passionate about my humans, but even more so for my animals. So we are going to disrupt some truths and get into it today. But before we do, I want to give some love to our sponsors, Colorado Clownfish Swim School. They are water lessons and swim lessons for training for all ages. They believe in life skills through sports. So go waterproof your family today. And our very favorite Plantiva, developing products you can trust, delivering results you can feel. Go check them out at plantiva.com. Without further ado, I want to welcome the Dr. Judy Morgan to the TNT mic. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here.
Yes. So we're taking a super hot take today. There's lots to disrupt in the pet and wellness space. But before we do any of that, I do like to get to the human behind the mission first. So tell us about like young Judy, like who you are. Was it in the stars very early?
It was not in the stars very early to be where I am now or what I'm doing now. Growing up, we had 1 dog most of the time, sometimes 2. My dad had a hunting dog. And we didn't have a lot of animals. My sister and I kind of really liked them. My mom grew up on a farm, so she's really the animal person. My dad, not so much. And we got horses when we were in junior high. And then my mom enrolled us in 4-H because we got these horses and had no idea what to do with them. I mean, I feel sorry for those horses because man, oh man, the care that they got was, we loved them very much, but we had no clue. Yeah. And so my mom signed us up for 4-H, which ended up really changing the trajectory of my life and my career. We had to learn public speaking for 4-H. So thank God, because now I rely on that a lot. So they taught me a lot, and then just learning a lot about animals. And through our horses and riding, that's how I decided that I wanted to be a veterinarian. And I graduated from vet school in 1984, land of the dinosaurs, 1984 in the Midwest. So we are talking very, very traditional, conventional, nothing out of the normal conventional box was taught at all. And we didn't even have these other things to fall back on. As a matter of fact, the American Holistic Veterinary Medical Association didn't even start until sometime in the mid to late 80s. So it didn't even exist. And I practiced very traditional medicine for the first 10 years. I hated it. I was miserable. I hated my career. I didn't like what I was doing. It's just more of the same. And I kept saying, oh my gosh, if I have to talk about heartworms and fleas and vaccines, like one more day, I just can't do this. And luckily, about 10 years into my career, I took a chiropractic course, not knowing that it was a chiropractic course. It had a different name on it. And it literally changed my life, and it changed what I was able to do with my patients. And it was so empowering that I said, well, there's got to be other stuff out here. Like what else exists? And then I just started looking at everything. And what I really fell into as my favorite therapies are traditional Chinese veterinary medicine. So acupuncture, food therapy, which really became kind of my number one focus. And what I discovered is, with the right diet, you can fix almost anything. Yes. Food has the power to heal. We just need to use it correctly. And then we also do Chinese herbal medicine and Tui Na, which is sort of a combination chiropractic massage. So that would really form my basis. But because I had all these new clients coming in who, everybody had a different background and they would bring different things with them. Like, oh, I use raindrop therapy. I use dowsing. I use essential oils. I use smoke and mirrors. And I'm like, great, fine. Teach me. What do I need to learn? There's more out there. And so one of the things with holistic medicine is that we just learn to be more open-minded and to say, well, I don't know anything about that. Let me ask questions. Let me look. And unfortunately, with complementary, I don't like to call it alternative because it's really more traditional. Chinese medicine's been around for 3,000 years. So like we should call that traditional medicine.
Totally.
But it does teach us to open our mind more, and it just gives me more tools in my toolbox. So for me, it's just like, okay, well, when you come to me and you've tried these 27 different things, I'm like, good, I got 27 more. Let's just, see what works. So it, luckily, because it changed my career, I started loving my career, and that has brought me to where I am now.
Yeah. No, that's so incredible. And I assume back in the day when you initially started, there probably wasn't a lot of female veterinarians in your space.
No. So when I went to veterinary school, I would say maybe 30% of my class was women. And I remember when we first got our ponies when I was in junior high, we had a woman equine veterinarian, which, let me tell you, in the late 1960s, early 70s, that was unheard of. And she was a real pioneer, and she was so cool. Like nothing fazed her. And I was like, that's pretty cool. And the woman who actually made me want to go to vet school was a woman veterinarian from Canada. She was the daughter of my riding instructor, and she did surgery on one of my ponies and let me assist. And it was the coolest thing I had ever done. Yeah. And she literally saved his life. So I was like, I want to do this. This is really cool.
Oh man, universe sets us up. I swear it's such a funny thing. And that's why representation is so huge. That was a perfect explanation, Tia, but I actually do want to read your bio because I want people to know how extensive, not only like your experiences, but the business side you've had to navigate, which is a whole other podcast, but I want to highlight that. Dr. Judy Morgan, DVM, CVA, CVCP, CVFT, has over 40 years experience as an integrative veterinarian, acupuncturist, chiropractor, food therapist, best-selling author, international speaker, podcast host, and owner of Dr. Judy Morgan's Naturally Healthy Pets. Her goal is to change the lives of pets by educating and empowering pet parents worldwide in the use of natural healing therapies and minimizing the use of chemicals, vaccinations, and poor quality processed foods. If you know me and you know TNT, this Dr. Judy is a perfect guest because I talk about all those things for humans and disrupting it. And of course, as I mentioned, I have 3 rescues. I have made it my mission. They're like my babies, to try and take care of them and question a better way. And I started even making their food early on because one of them said they had a food allergy, and that's a whole thing. But we have so many questions to get through because I have so many questions with now my dog's 11. So 11 years of pup personally experience and dealing with different vets and just being a health and wellness human being like, man, that just doesn't feel right. And it's a really hard space. And I've asked other veterinarians to come on, alternative, like you said, they're not necessarily alternative, but people in the pet space, and nobody wants to get on the mic. So you're one of the first.
Really?
Yes, they're very apprehensive. So it's interesting. It's a changing space. And I do think there's some disruptors like you that want to, but a lot, I think, they have partnerships with big food brands and stuff, and they don't want to get in the mix. So the business side, we know. So let's jump in right away. When we initially connected, the title of the podcast was "Why Are We Killing Our Pets?" So this is really true. I've got a bunch of questions, but instead of me doing a rapid fire, which we'll get to, I want you to start with what is like the number one thing you want to talk about that you want people to know right now.
Oh, so many things.
Yeah.
So the first thing is we need to stop feeding ultra processed food to our pets. And the veterinary industry, unfortunately, is literally bought by big pet food. So, in the human space, we talk about big food, big pharma. Well, we have the same problem. We have big food, we have big pharma, and big food and big pharma have a huge influence on veterinary medicine education. All of our continuing education is sponsored by big food and big pharma. The 2 largest sellers of pet food in the world are Nestle Purina and Mars, 2 candy companies who make ultra-processed human food. Where do the waste products from human food processing go? Oh yeah, that would be for pet food. So not only is it ultra-processed, it's also filled with a lot of waste products that we don't have anything else to do with. And so food is the foundation of life. We can use food to heal, or we can use food to harm. And, I'm so thankful that in the past year and a half, we have started talking about the harm of ultra processed food for humans, the dyes, the preservatives, the things that are in there that should not be in there. Basically, how does a grass product, a generally recognized as safe product, get into the food chain? The company who makes it comes and says, we think it's safe. And FDA says, okay, you said so, it's good. Right. Yeah, no, where was the testing? Where were the studies? There weren't any. And so it's much worse in pet food than it is in human food. So one of the things that people don't realize is that when you go to the grocery store and buy meat, so you buy chicken, you buy beef, whatever, when that animal went to slaughter, it was cut into its parts and pieces, and any parts and pieces that are not suitable for human consumption go into a big vat and go to the rendering plant for pet food. So that's bad enough. There was scar tissue, there was a cancerous tumor, we cut that out, we threw it in the vat, that goes to pet food. But if a cow dies out in the field, so, let's say we have a dairy farmer with 300 cows, and he goes out and, there's a dead cow out in the field, don't know what it died from, don't really care. The dead body guy comes and picks up that cow, and it goes to the rendering plant and it gets used for pet food. So this is a diseased, decaying body that legally is not allowed to go to pet food, but legally does go to pet food. So it's a very weird thing. There's actually a law on the books that says animals that died otherwise than by slaughter. So basically it died. It wasn't sent to slaughter for food, but it died. That's illegal to go into any kind of food, human or pet. And so when we said to FDA, hey, the law says you can't use this for pet food. Why do you allow it to be used for pet food? All these dead bodies that get transported in open trucks and they're decaying, but yet they get sent to the rendering plant. What? Sorry for anybody who's eating lunch. So we said to them, well, why do you allow this? It's not legal. And they said, we choose to ignore that. We think it's non-actionable. It's well, then why don't you change the law? They feel like they don't need to follow the law. They don't need to change the law. They can just do whatever they want to do. And their answer to us is always, well, what do you want us to do with that? Do you want it to go to a landfill? How wasteful is that? I'm well, a landfill is a more appropriate place for it to go. I don't want waste products like that being fed to my pets that literally are decaying. Yeah. And they said, well, it gets rendered. It gets cooked at high temperatures and melted down. So any bacteria that are in there get killed, and so it's not a problem. I'm it's still a problem. Yeah. And the head of the largest rendering association in the United States was the keynote speaker at one of the feed control officials' meetings a few years ago. In his keynote, he said it is almost impossible to have a rendered meat meal that does not have euthanasia solution in it. Because, an animal may have been put down and it's not supposed to go into the food chain, but then it accidentally does. And he literally said in his keynote, it is almost impossible to have meat meal products that don't have some euthanasia solution in them. So when we went to FDA with that, because they have had a couple of recalls with euthanasia solution, oh, look at that, there was enough, it actually killed a dog. Again, their answer is, well, it's in low enough quantities that it's not a problem.
Right.
I'm how, for my dog, my cat, any euthanasia solution, one drop, too much. Sorry, too much.
Yeah.
So one of the things I want people to know is be very careful what you are feeding your pets, and ultra processed food is not a good answer if it's got rendered products in it. And it's got rendered products if it has unnamed meats. So it says meat meal, meat and bone meal, animal digest. It's what animal? What meat? So if it says chicken meal, at least it was all chickens. But chicken meal is made by melting down the entire bird. So when we think of chicken, we think of what we see in the grocery store. But generally for instance, with the avian influenza problem that we've had where they've depopulated millions of birds, where do those birds go? They don't go to the landfill.
Right.
They're in pet food. And so to kill them, they basically either cover them with a foam that suffocates them, like the whole poultry house, or they use a gas basically that suffocates them. So now we've got 1 million dead birds. Well, nobody is plucking those birds and eviscerating those birds. The whole bird goes into the rendering vat. So that's the intestinal contents and everything else. Now, what's really interesting, like I rail against this and I'm like, well, what I really don't like is that you're like cooking down the intestinal, like you're basically there's poop in here that's getting, getting rendered along with it. I don't have a problem with the feathers. So we have a farm and we process our own meat chickens. And so the first time we processed, we had all these feathers. And, we're kind of like, what are we going to do with all these feathers? And my daughter had this great idea. She's like, well, I'm going to put all the feathers in a pillowcase, run them through my washer and my dryer, and then I'll put them on Facebook Marketplace. And, people are going to want these for craft projects or whatever. So she went through all that. She had feathers like everywhere in her house. Yeah. They were everywhere.
Yeah.
She went through all that. Nobody wanted the feathers. And I'm like, that's weird. I really thought that, like we were willing to give them away, but somebody should want these feathers. Nobody wanted them. So she said, well, I'm just going to feed them to my dogs and cats. And so every single meal, our animals are raw fed. So they're on, raw meat meals. And she said every single meal for a few weeks, she took a handful of feathers and just added it to their food and they ate it. No problem.
Huh.
And she said, I really expected when I cleaned up my yard to find a lot of undigested feathers in my backyard. Nope, 100% digestible. And they actually provide a protein source and a lot of trace minerals that are hard to get. So, feeding, like I have a lot of outside barn cats. When they catch a bird, they eat everything.
Yeah.
Like the feathers, like everything goes. When they catch a rabbit or a mouse, they eat everything, all the fur, everything. And so it's actually really good for our animals. So I don't have a problem with, the whole animal per se going into the pet food because a lot of that is digestible. And like, we don't like to eat liver and kidneys and lungs and heart, but that stuff is actually super, super nutritious. It's very nutrient dense. So when you see animal byproducts on a label, well, I don't like animal byproducts because we don't know what animal, but let's say it says turkey byproducts on there. Well, that just means we're using the heart and the gizzard and the liver and the lungs. And it's like, that's so nutritious. It would be very nutritious for us.
Right.
But we all just kind of go, ew.
Right.
You go to Europe and steak and kidney pie is very popular.
Yeah. Yeah. It's good for you. Yeah.
So food is like my big thing. We should not eat ultra processed food and we should not use it for our pets.
Man. Okay. Well, and I feel like universe is looking out for me when my Cleo, my oldest and first pet, we took her in and they said she's a food allergy. And at the time it was funny because I was working with a meat client, like really clean meat. And she's like, yeah, she can't eat red meat. I'm like, this is the one thing I get for free. It's really clean. So, and you never know, it wasn't a biopsy. So like no allergies are for sure until you like see that. So anyways, I started making their food and it's like oats and carrots and celery and turmeric and ginger, bone broth. I don't know what your quick thoughts are, but it's a huge chore for me. And I've looked at, the farmer's dog and some of these other ones that are great, but then it's a ton of plastic. It's super expensive. There's other things. What do you recommend for, like, is there, do you like any of the food that comes out of a bag? And B, if not, what's like the next best thing people can do if they want to make it themselves?
So the really cool thing is that in the past decade, people have gotten smarter. And people are waking up to the fact that, hey, this ultra processed crap in a bag probably is not the best thing to be feeding my dog and my cat. So the good news is we have literally hundreds of smaller, newer companies who are doing things right. Now, you mentioned Farmer's Dog, and there's Just Food for Dogs. I have problems with some of those companies because while they are using whole foods, and I applaud them for that, and most of them are gently cooked, so it's not rendered products, it's not cooked at really high heat, they use a lot more carbohydrates than I would ever use in my pets' diets. So when we look at food requirements, and we can look at the AAFCO, which is the American Association of Feed Control Officials, every year they put out something called the OP, the official publication. And in there they list, this is how much they need of each amino acid. This is the minimum protein. This is the minimum fat. Under carbohydrates, the requirement is 0. Our pets have 0 requirement for carbohydrates. This is proven in all the science studies of how do we, feed our pets and supply the amino acids that they need. There was something that came out in about 2018, 19 that has been debunked, but it was sponsored by the big pet food companies, saying that our dogs have to have grains in their diet, otherwise they have heart failure. Absolutely 100% false. The problem is that the big pet food companies, what's the most expensive ingredient? Protein.
Yeah.
Meat. And so if we can get our protein from peas or from oats or from some other legume or starch, it's going to be a lot cheaper. And so a lot of the big processed pet food companies have started, well, they've been doing it for decades, but they're decreasing the amount of meat in the food and increasing the amount of fillers in the food. And when you make an ultra processed dry kibble, in order to go through the extrusion process, it must have a starch to hold it together. Otherwise, it just gums up the machines and it doesn't work. So those ultra processed kibbles that go through an extrusion process cannot have more than 30% meat in the food. So cats, obligate carnivores. They need a high meat diet, and yet we're feeding them high corn diets. Absolutely not appropriate. And we did learn back in about 1970s, 1980s that, oh, look at this. We have cats dying of heart failure. We have cats going blind. And it's because there wasn't enough meat in their food. So there wasn't enough taurine and carnitine, the amino acids that support the heart, support the retina. And so they said, oh, so when we make these foods for cats, we have to add taurine. We have to have supplemental taurine in there. So when you look at cat foods, you'll almost, unless it's a raw food or a gently cooked food that is a species appropriate high meat diet, you will see taurine as an added ingredient. So back in 2018 and 19, when they had this big debacle and said, oh, we have to have grains in the food for our dogs, it was because we were seeing dogs going into heart failure and dogs that had low taurine levels. We've now discovered that that actually is a genetic golden retriever problem. How about that? Okay. So that was one issue that showed up. But basically, those companies wanted to tell everybody, hey, we need corn in the diets. We need grains in the diets. It was their way of saying, yeah, no, it's fine that we put all this stuff in here that your dog has no requirement for. But the bottom line is, no, what they really needed was taurine and carnitine. That comes from meat, and we need higher meat diets. So the smaller companies, and the thing is, when you see all this advertising on TV, who's spending the ad dollars? The big companies with a lot of money. You do see Just Food for Dogs and Farmer's Dog in particular. They were the first real food company that spent a ton of money on advertising. They got a lot of investors, and they had that $5 million Super Bowl ad a few years ago. Yep. And so they became a household name. And I have to give them kudos because they are making big inroads into the veterinary industry. And they are convincing veterinarians that, hey, there might be a better way to do this. And whole food, gently cooked is the way to do it instead of this ultra processed food. Unfortunately, they are still using synthetic vitamin mineral mixes in the food. And they are still using way too many carbohydrates because it's cheaper to do it that way. So, when I'm looking at recipes for my dogs and cats, they're going to be high meat. AFCO set the minimum for protein level for dogs is 18%, and for cats, that's like 22%. If we give them free choice, they're going to look for 50% protein and about 45% fat. Yeah, AFCO puts those numbers much lower because it's cheaper to make food with less meat protein in it.
Right.
So, and then we get the people who say, well, you're ruining the planet by telling people they have to feed meat to their animals. Like, even feeding meat to, they want us to eat lab grown meat, and they want us to eat crickets and, whatever. And, it's like they're making cricket pet food now. And I'm like, no.
Oh, there's cricket protein for humans. Yeah.
Yeah. And they're making it for pets. My cats, yes, they will grab grasshoppers out of the air and eat them. but it's not their mainstay.
Yeah.
It's a fun game for them. So, we're feeding incorrectly. So when I look at food for my animals, it's like, no, I'm going to feed you. What would you eat in nature? You would eat a high protein, high fat meal, and you wouldn't have carbohydrates. They do need a fiber source. So they get that in the wild. Like when my cats eat a bird or eat a mouse, they eat the stomach contents. So that's about 2% of the diet is this fiber content that literally has already been digested. So that's really what they need to eat. And when we look at, what would they eat in the wild? And, I have to laugh because my cats love pork. And I'm like, okay, all of you together can take down a pig. Oh, you love venison. Yeah. All of you together can't take down a deer. But,
right.
They like it, and that's fine. So for my own animals, I am switching up their meat sources. So there's probably 12 different protein sources in my freezer. I have a cat freezer and a dog freezer because I have a lot of animals. So gently cooked or raw, either one is fine. What we don't want is the ultra processed food. And I don't like to see a bunch of added vitamins and minerals, that synthetic vitamin mineral mix. So like if you look at your box of Cheerios, pick any cereal, you put it on your breakfast table and you sit there and read the ingredients while you're eating breakfast and you go, oh my gosh, it's like chemical soup. If you see chemical soup in your pet food, run.
Yeah, totally. Well, if you see it in your own food, run. It's
exactly.
The business is so crazy, and just finding, and then it comes to like travel and like my people babysitting my dogs, and so in the morning I give them a cup of food that's clean, it's processed, but I was worried about like the taurine and the other stuff that wasn't added. Like if I was making their food because it's just raw, but I give them a cup of food in the morning, and then for lunch, one of my dogs was really thin, so they do get 3 meals, and I've seen the research that 1 meal a day is ideal. But a raw egg, sweet potatoes, and some yogurt for probiotics, and then dinner is that oat mix I make with some ground turkey, turmeric, and ginger on it. And it's like my own formulation, but should I navigate away from that? Like, should we go down to 1 meal?
Not necessarily. You're definitely feeding more carbs than what I feed my own.
Okay.
So we have a lot of free downloads on our website with recipes, tons of recipes. So we have recipes for animals with heart disease, kidney disease, diabetes, pancreatitis. But we also have just kind of the day-to-day recipes. And there are a few things that people tend to leave out. And we don't want to do it by adding a whole bunch of vitamin and mineral supplements, but a calcium source is critical. So you can do that using ground eggshells. You can do it with a bone meal. If you can get a clean bone meal, you can do it with a seaweed calcium. So we have a bunch of those different resources. And it's hard sometimes to get the trace minerals, the manganese, the iodine, the zinc. And so again, a lot of those come from supplements from the sea, so kelp or seaweed supplements. The best way to get zinc, the most concentrated zinc is oysters. So 1 oyster a day or 7 a week, doesn't matter whether you feed them all at once or every day. So we have a lot of recipes. Like we just put out recently, I think it's 5 very, very simple recipes that need 3 supplements, and the 3 supplements are listed on the website, but they are complete and balanced, whether you're feeding them raw or feeding them gently cooked. And those simple recipes were made with ingredients that anybody could get at any grocery store, because a lot of the recipes end up with some specialty ingredients in them. And people are like, a lot of people live in food deserts and they're like, I can't find that kind of stuff. Yeah. So we wanted to make it really simple for people. It's like, okay, these 3 supplements, it'll balance all of these. So here's a pork, here's a chicken, here's a beef, So we wanted to make it simple for people to do, because people can get really overwhelmed. Like if you really are interested in diving deeper in it, we have a course on homemade food for dogs. Okay. We also have, if you really want to dive deep, we have courses using traditional Chinese veterinary medicine food therapy. Okay. So if you want to figure out your dog's personality and how to feed them to really support that, keep them well balanced, then that's a course where you can dive deep and, take it to the next level. And there's a ton of recipes in there as well. So, some people just get overwhelmed
Yeah.
by, oh my gosh, making my dog's food, that would be horrible. So what you want to do is you want to make things in batches so that you're like, when I first started talking about this, my clients, I didn't realize that they were literally making a new meal every single night. And they're like, I don't have time to even cook for my family and I'm cooking for the dog. And I was like, no, you're supposed to be making big batches. So
freeze it. Yes.
Yeah. At one point, my husband and I had 10 dogs. Actually, we had 13 at one point.
Hashtag goals.
But we had 10. Yeah. We had 10 dogs and we were feeding all of our own raw dog food that we were making. And so we bought a really good grinder that, makes things very fast. And we would film this. So twice a month on Sunday afternoon, we'd spend about 2 hours and we would grind about 150 pounds of food, label it. So we would do a bunch of different batches. Like here's our pork batch, here's our beef batch, label them, put them in the freezer. We're good to go for 2 weeks. And, people were like, oh, this is so much work. And I'm like, really? Because it's 4 hours a month.
Yeah.
To feed 10 dogs.
Yeah. And if you're doing your stuff, you're saving money.
Yeah, you need to learn to batch things and get efficient with doing it. And it was, it was 2 of us doing it, so it was a little bit easier. But if you have 1 dog, you literally could make enough food in one afternoon to last, if you have freezer space, 2 or 3 months. So it's not that involved.
Yeah.
We have other people who don't have a lot of freezer space and they're like, okay, I make a week's worth at a time. You can keep it in your refrigerator for 3 to 5 days. So maybe you need to do it every 5 days if you don't have freezer space. For people who don't want to make their own. And so we used to have a motorhome. And traveling with 5 or 6 dogs in a motorhome, we didn't always have enough freezer space for the frozen food. So freeze-dried food is amazing because it's very lightweight. You carry it with you. You add water or bone broth or whatever liquid you want to add to it to rehydrate it and serve it up. So really simple. I will say that freeze-dried food is probably the most expensive because freeze dryers are very expensive. I've looked at getting a home freeze dryer. I'm like, that's a lot of money for this. Yeah, and they take up a lot of space. So companies that are making freeze-dried food, there's a lot invested in that.
Yeah.
So that's the most expensive way. But if money is not a big issue and you need something to travel with, it's really, really handy.
Yeah.
So, I liken it to I've dealt with a lot of people who are like, I don't even know how to turn my oven on. I don't even know how to boil water.
That's a whole other problem.
It is another whole problem. Like this one woman, she was in California and she wanted to make food for her dog. And so, we were doing a consultation to, heal all the problems that the dog had. And she said, oh, I don't know how to turn my oven on. I'm like, how?
You shouldn't have a dog. What?
I'm like, how do you cook your food? And I said, what does your dog like? Oh, he loves it when I give him pieces of my chicken. I'm like, well, where is your chicken coming from? And she said, I buy TV dinners. So that just made me feel sorry for her right there. And she said, I buy TV dinners and I make them in my microwave and then I share with the dog. And I'm like, okay, this is so not good for both of you because oh my God, the salt and the preservatives and whatever.
Oh my God.
And I said, okay, that's not good. But if I can get you TV dinners for your dog, could you manage that? She's like, I guess my neighbor could come turn my oven on. I'm like, you're going to burn your house down. No. So I said,
my God.
I said, if I get TV dinners for your dog that you literally can just thaw out and feed, could you do that? And she said, oh, that would be amazing. So, one of these companies that makes complete meals that are, like there are companies that literally you tell them what size your dog is and what your dog's allergies or problems are. They will make the food for you. It's just going to be, and it'll be in single serving portions. It's just more expensive.
Right.
And it's like, well, if you eat out every meal and have somebody else make your food, it's more expensive. If you make your own food, it's less expensive.
Right. And you know what's going in it. It's so wild. There is now, the beauty is even like, since I got Cleo, she's 11 and thriving, let it be known, but it's the game has just changed. The options, like there is something for everybody. So anything you're looking for, it's out there. And go check out Dr. Judy's website, naturallyhealthypets.com, because there are a plethora of options and things you have done. I do want to take a hard pivot just because I want to get into vaccines. This is the thing that stresses me out the most, especially as a human. And you see what's going on in our political system on the human side. And I think, just like you said, it's just like that for our dogs. So let's bust right in what vaccine should we be using and what vaccine should we be avoiding? And I know this is a whole podcast in itself and you've talked it a lot, but give us the overview.
So the overview is your pets need very few Very, very few. And I go in depth on vaccines in a couple of my books, and we have a lot of blogs about it as well. So rabies, frankly, is the only vaccine that is required. And that's pretty much across the board, nationally, state, local, your veterinarian. And so the first rabies vaccine they ever get is labeled for 1 year. Doesn't matter which they can use the 3-year vaccine, they can use the 1-year vaccine, but the first rabies vaccine that your pet gets that you know of. So this is a problem if you adopt a dog from a shelter, rescue, whatever. If they don't know the history on the dog and they give a rabies vaccine, they're going to label it as a 1-year vaccine, no matter the age of the dog, because they don't know that he's had another one in the past. So the first one is a 1 year. After that, every vaccine is good for 3 years on the rabies. And that is legally mandated. Now, how long does it last? It may last 10 years. It may last a lifetime. The only way to know for sure is to do a titer, which is a blood test. And the blood test says, yes, he's got antibodies to rabies, or nope, we don't see any there. If they see antibodies, it's like, all right, body recognizes it. He's had a rabies vaccine before. So like when I adopt or rescue an animal, I try to get them to hold off. Like if I know I'm going to be adopting, I try to get them to hold off on giving anything. I'm like, get a titer, get a blood test. Let's see what we have already, so that I'm not doubling down on that. So we're a little bit stuck with rabies because a lot of veterinary clinics say we're not even going to see your pet unless they're up to date on rabies. So kind of backed into a corner on that one. As far as the other vaccines, so distemper, hepatitis, parvo, the DAP vaccine, those are core vaccines. And so most veterinarians and most pet owners will insist on puppy vaccines or kitten vaccines, which is distemper. It's a FERCP for them, DAP for dogs. So most people will get that as their puppies or kittens. The problem is they get way too many. They need 2. Yeah. And we definitely should not start their puppy and kitten vaccines till they're about 12 to 14 weeks old. Unfortunately, pet stores, breeders, veterinarians say, oh no, 6 weeks, let's go. And then they give them every 2 weeks from 6 weeks until 16 weeks. And it's way too many. So I would see puppies and kittens come into my clinic that had like a series of 7 puppy vaccines. I'm like, oh my gosh, like no wonder he's an allergic disaster. Yeah. So you want to try to minimize that as much as possible. 2 is going to be just fine. If you adopt an adult dog, 1 is all you need. Like they don't need a series of 2. A lot of veterinarians will say, oh no, we don't know his history. We gave 1 and we need you to come back in 3 weeks for another. No, you do not need to. 1, because their immune system knows how to work at that point. So 1 vaccine is all you need. Those vaccines may last a lifetime as well. So when I graduated from school, we were told every vaccine, every animal, every year. And so you get your little card in the mail that says your dog is due for shots or your cat is due for shots. It's like, yeah, or not. And what the card should say is, hey, Fluffy is due to come in for a complete physical examination and some lab work. That would be appropriate and that would be advisable. Because your veterinarian can listen with a stethoscope and they can palpate the abdomen and they can look in the back of the eyeballs and they can look deep in the ears and they can get blood work that tells you how their kidneys and liver are functioning. They can listen to the heart and know whether they have a murmur or something going on. So that exam is really valuable. And I'm a huge fan of lab work. So I'm like, yeah, I want that every year. And I want to see what's going on inside because I can't tell without doing that. So that's really valuable. But to say he needs to come in for shots, that has always been the calling card to get people to come in the door. And so when we started realizing like, they actually are pretty good for a long time with these vaccines, the veterinarians pushed back and said, if we don't send that card saying they're due for shots, people won't come in. And so this is where I get a little bit crazy. Like I go to Tractor Supply to pick up something for the farm and there's this long line of dogs standing in line to get all their shots updated. And it's low cost. So a lot of people don't have a relationship with a veterinarian. They go stand in line once a year and get all the shots updated. And it's like, that is probably the least important thing of what your veterinarian should be doing for you. So I'm kind of against these vaccine clinics because I'm like, no, you need to have a relationship and somebody who knows the history on your animal and follows them from being a little puppy all the way up until the end of their life, which for dogs is hopefully 20 years and cats is hopefully 30 years. That's what we're aiming for. So like you said, your dogs are all due for their annual exam. Great. Fine. Let's go get that exam. Let's, they're older. Let's get some lab work. Let's see what their kidneys and liver are doing. But if they've had vaccines in the past, asking for a titer makes a lot more sense instead of just giving them a vaccine and sending their immune system into overdrive. So we have titers for distemper, hepatitis, parvo, and rabies. The biggest problem is a lot of veterinarians don't like to do those because it requires a blood draw, and that's more work and more time and more effort. And interestingly, now we all took the same immunology class, but a lot of veterinarians go, I don't believe in titers. I don't think that tells you anything. I don't think that's valid. I'm like, it's science. How can that not be valid? And if they have a positive titer, they're protected. We don't need to give them a booster. So that's what we can do for the core vaccines. Now we have all these other vaccines, and interestingly, the powers that be in veterinary medicine recently added leptospirosis, changed it from a lifestyle vaccine to a core vaccine. I hate the lepto vaccine. In my 36 years in clinical practice, I saw 4 cases of lepto. So it's not like it's running rampant. So that's, how many tens of thousands of animals did I see in that period of time? It's not something that's running rampant. It's spread through the urine of rats, raccoons, possums, skunks, and dairy cattle. Okay. Do you live in a high rise in New York City? Could be a problem if your dog walks on the streets of New York City where they happen to have a rat problem. Maybe. Or you could put boots on your dog and not let them lick the sidewalk. So we have to look at what are our animals exposed to. I hate the lepto vaccine. It only lasts 9 to 12 months. So it is something that you have to give every year if you decide that your pet is at risk. It's a highly reactive vaccine. So if you have a small dog, I don't recommend it at all. I've never given it to my own dogs. That vaccine makes me really nervous. I saw way too many animals have really bad reactions to it. Then we have things like kennel cough and influenza. Well, those are definitely lifestyle vaccines. I don't recommend them. I've never used them on my own animals. I didn't even carry the influenza vaccine in my practice. To me, they're not a big problem. Like vaccinating for kennel cough, that's like trying to vaccinate kids for the common cold.
Right.
It's not deadly. Influenza is deadly in a very small percentage. And it's usually like in pet store puppies or animals in really crowded situations. Most of the big outbreaks that we've seen have been like in veterinary hospitals where they had a dog with influenza in ICU, and then all the other animals in ICU also got it. It's like, well, then you didn't do a good job isolating, and you don't have a good HVAC system that is keeping the air purified. But unfortunately, the boarding, grooming, daycare facilities require a long list of vaccinations.
Right.
And so for me, my dogs, I have spaniels. They need regular grooming. I don't take them to the groomer. I bought all the equipment. I learned how to do it myself because I am not going to give a bunch of vaccines just so that they can go get a bath and a haircut. So I don't take my dogs to daycare. I don't board my dogs. Someone comes and stays at my house. I don't take my dogs to dog parks because, first of all, my dogs would be horrible at dog parks. They are not sociable. They're sociable with each other, and that's about as far as we go. Yeah. So you have to look at the lifestyle of your dog and, the requirements that you have for your dog. For some people who work 10 hours a day, 5 days a week, taking their dog to doggy daycare and letting them play is giving them an outlet and socialization. And that can be a very, very good thing rather than the dog sitting home alone 10 hours a day, 5 days a week.
Right.
So look at your lifestyle, look at what the requirements are. And then if you do have a laundry list of vaccines that you need to give, you need to spread them out. Do not go in and get them all at one time. There's great studies that have been published just within the last 2 years that look at the size of the dog and the number of vaccines given at one time. So the smaller the dog, the more likely they are to react. The more vaccines given at the same time, the more likely they are to react. So I know it's a pain in the butt, but if your dog needs 5 vaccines, you're going to have 5 trips to the veterinarian, one at a time, about 3 weeks apart. So it's going to take you half the year to get it all done. But that's the way it needs to be done to keep your pets safe. My dogs are very, very minimally vaccinated, and it's because I don't take them to those places, and I don't, they're on my farm. They don't leave. They don't see other animals. So you have to look at every one of them as an individual. And if you have on the vaccine label, it specifically says to be given to a healthy animal for prevention of whatever. If you have an animal with chronic inflammatory disease, whatever that may be, seizures, cancer, that's not a healthy animal. That is not an animal that is a candidate for vaccines. And it's really interesting because only once in my life have I had chemotherapy done on an animal. And when I went to the oncologist, I decided, well, this is a good time to ask questions. And the funny thing is she was a holistic oncologist, so she was trained in traditional Chinese medicine. And I said to her, okay, I've got this dog with cancer. She's getting chemotherapy. If she was due for her rabies vaccine right now, would you want her to have it? Absolutely, no problem. Yeah, we vaccinate dogs that are undergoing chemo all the time. And I just looked at her and said, you have got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
And I said, if I go to the veterinary oncology meeting and I see, 300 oncologists there, are they all going to give me that same answer? And she said, yes. And I said, that is very scary.
Yeah. God, this just like humans, man. You got to advocate for yourself and for your pets.
Absolutely, 100%.
And know what's going on, because it is so overwhelming. But that's the upside of social media and podcasts and conversations like this is you can question a better way as an individual without being a professional vet, doc, whatever. But just a human that cares about their pets. That the info's out there.
Right.
God, I have so many questions on this.
That is the whole thing. It's being brave enough to ask questions.
Yeah.
And that is very scary for people because you're standing across the table from someone in a white coat.
Yes.
And so my mother lives with us. She's almost 90. And so I've been in and out of the hospital with her with different things. Like she fell and shattered her shoulder and her hip and is like, oh my gosh, this is fun. She had a bowel obstruction, like all these different things that we've had to navigate. And dealing with somebody in a white coat, I mean, I'm brave and I am willing to say, no, we are not doing it that way. And I'm brave enough to ask questions like, why do you want to hang those 3 antibiotics on her IV pole? What are they? What are the side effects of those? Like, you have to be brave enough to ask those questions, and you have to understand there's a way to ask those questions without getting them to be all defensive. I mean, there have been times, especially with my mom, where I'm like, yeah, I'm going to put you on the defensive because I'm mad.
It needs to happen.
But when you go in with your animal, you want to have a good relationship with your veterinarian. You want to find somebody that you can talk to. You want to find someone like, I don't have a license to practice right now, so I have to take my animals to a veterinarian, which is very weird for me being on the other side of the table. So when we moved to where we are now, there was a new practice opening in town, fairly young vet. And I said, well, okay, let's go check this out. And I took 5 animals with me. And we walked in, she comes in the room and I said, hi, I'm Dr. Judy Morgan. I'm a retired veterinarian. I don't vaccinate my animals and I feed them raw food. Are you okay with that? And she just kind of looked at me and she went, yeah, that's okay. And I said, all right, we're staying. Like, we're good. And so, and I'm pretty brash about it, and if she has said, no, absolutely not, I'm not treating your animals without all these vaccines on board and you have to feed this crap food, I would have said, thank you very much for your time. We'll go down the street. And I would have kept searching. But there are a lot of people who, just like food deserts, there are veterinary deserts. It's like there's one within 50 miles. So you better get along with them because you might need them.
Right.
And so it's, and I go in my book, Raising Naturally Healthy Pets, I talk about this a lot, like how to get along with your traditional veterinarian, how to get your way without making everybody mad, without getting kicked out of the office,
Right.
being able. And so the most powerful thing you can do as a pet owner is to be educated, to understand, like, how is distemper transmitted? How likely is my dog to get that? Like, how does the vaccine work? How reactive is that vaccine? How long does that vaccine last? Well, if you know the answers to all those questions, it's a totally different conversation than standing there when they go, no, we require this.
Right.
Like, well,
Right.
So education.
Well, people forget you're also the customer. Like, you're the one paying to be there. I think people forget that, even in your own healthcare.
But what's really interesting? Like I said, I'm a huge fan of lab work. And I have had people go to their veterinarian and say, I'd like to have lab work run on my dog. While I'm here, I want to get a full lab panel. And so I tell people all the time, this is what I want you to get every year. And they'll go in and they say, I'd like to have this run. You'd be amazed how many veterinarians say, no, we don't need to do that.
I completely believe
I'm
it.
like,
Yeah.
you're standing there saying, I will pay the bill.
Right.
This is what I want done. And they're saying no.
Right.
Like, I don't understand it at all. Like, this is proactive care.
Yeah.
And it is shocking to me how often they say no. Like, I mean, because I can do it, I draw my own blood samples, get my urine samples, get my stool samples at home. I take them in already bagged up and go, can you run this for me? I've never had them say no. They're like, which panel do you want?
You got it. Well, it's just like Doctors for Humans. So you got to find your human that you trust, know, like, and trust, just like in business. And it's okay to say no. And it's certainly okay to walk out the door. This is your baby, your pet, whatever. Just like
I have walked out the door. You
got to.
I had one dog that needed an ultrasound. I knew he had cancer. I was just trying to figure out where the cancer was. Mm-hmm. And I knew it just from his symptoms. I'm like, there's cancer here somewhere. We got to find it. And he also was in heart failure. And I took him in and I wanted an ultrasound. And the specialty vet who came in for the day to do the ultrasounds refused to talk to me and refused to do it without sedating my dog. And so the technician came out and said, we're going to sedate the dog. And I said, no, you're not. We're not. He's got a bad heart. We're not sedating the dog. He's fine. He's calm. He'll be good. And so she went back and told him that. And he said, nope, not doing it without sedating the dog. I said, will he come out here and talk to me? And, colleague to colleague. Yeah. And I'm thinking, man, what if I wasn't even, like, I didn't have this knowledge? Like, this really stinks. And I said, he needs to come out here and talk to me, or I need to go back there and talk to him. And so she went and said that to him, and he said, no. And I said, give me my dog. See you later. We are out of here. Like, he will never touch one of my dogs because he's not even willing to have a conversation.
That was a blessing, I think, in general, for you to know right away.
100%. And I found somebody else who, when I said, can you do this without sedation? She listened to his heart and she said, oh my God, I'd never sedate this dog. And I'm like, duh.
Yeah. Oh my God. It's so crazy. You really do. You got to advocate and speak up. And it's wild. I have so many more questions and I know we're tight on time. I want to rapid fire really quickly. And I know each of these questions are a podcast in themselves. So if you want to just say tune into my other podcast, feel free. But vaccines we talked about. What about ticks and essential oils or the heartworm meds?
So fleas, ticks, heartworms. We have a book, Protecting Your Pet Against Parasites, that dives deep into all of this. I will tell people, avoid the chemical pesticides that are being sold to you to put on your pets and to feed to your pets. We would not feed our children pesticides. We should not be feeding our pets pesticides. And by the way, those pesticides that we are putting on and feeding to our pets are destroying our environment. Yeah. They're killing the bugs that eat the poop that your dogs poop out. They are being found in the waterways. They are being found in the hair of children when it's tested. These pesticides that we're putting in and on our animals are killing baby birds because the mama birds use your pet's hair to make nests. And so if we are killing baby birds and we're killing insects, we are wrecking our environment. So it's not just what you're exposing your family and your pet to, it's what we're doing to the environment. So tons of natural ways. All of them are on our website. A lot of it's not even stuff that you have to spend money on. There are so many ways we can keep parasites off our pets. I have 7 barn cats. I do not use any chemicals on them. I live in the South. We don't use chemicals to keep fleas off our cats. We don't use chemicals on our farm animals for the flies. Everything is done with natural products, and it is possible. And then we aren't killing our environment and our kids.
Amen. What about heartworm?
So heartworm is a little different depending on where you live, although I will say I live in North Carolina and my dogs do not get heartworm preventatives. So a healthy immune system will keep your pet safe. But if you have a pet with chronic inflammatory diseases, then you got a bigger problem because their immune system is not working correctly. And that's all explained on our website and in that book. But it really depends on where you live. When I lived in New Jersey, for my clients, we used heartworm preventative seasonally. So we have a lot of mosquitoes, a lot of heartworm, not as bad there as it is. So if you live in like the Mississippi River lower valley, big problem. Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, big problem. The one thing I will say about heartworm preventative, use a monthly product. Do not use the long-lasting injectables. So dangerous. ProHeart 6, ProHeart 12, very, very dangerous. Lots of animals with neurologic problems. All of these chemicals that we use for fleas, ticks, and heartworms, they are neurotoxins, which means they affect the brain and the spinal cord and the nervous system. And so we have so many animals that have tremors, seizures, and die. And I'm just so against them.
Oh man. I've heard you on other shows. We really got into that one. Next note, how many times should a dog eat a day? Depends on the dog.
Totally depends on the dog. So mine eat twice a day and they're trained. They know what time it is and they tell me. But there are a lot of people that feed once a day. There are a lot of people who fast their dogs. There's a nutritionist in Europe. She's amazing. She has like 16 chihuahuas and she never feeds her dogs at the same time day to day.
Okay.
She's like, it's really random. And what's really interesting with that, a lot of people who say, oh my God, my dog gets hunger pukes. If I don't feed them by 6 o'clock in the morning, he's got the morning pukes. The reason he has the morning pukes is because he's already secreting stomach acid. Like I said, my dogs know what time it is. They're already secreting stomach acid. They're already starting to salivate and they're producing digestive enzymes. It's very harsh for the stomach. And so then you keep having to move the time back and back and back till, it's 2 o'clock in the morning and you're having to get up, feed your animal. So
I do that.
Yeah, exactly. So feeding randomly, it can actually work out a lot better. And if you have an animal with hunger pukes, a couple things you can do. A ginger cookie before bed is very, very helpful. Ginger is very good for digestion, very soothing. So we just have people add a little ginger tea or a ginger cookie at bedtime can be really helpful. But if you have an animal who has those, like one of mine, if I'm late with breakfast, he's puking bile because breakfast was an hour late and he's been all excited for an hour. He's been running in circles. He's all excited. Like it's coming until he pukes. And that's because I have trained him to, it's like Pavlov's dogs. It's like, I know it's coming. And we've trained their system to that. So if you have a dog who has those hunger pukes, start feeding randomly, you might find that it goes away.
And the ginger with the humans, again, it's so funny how much correlates with humans and even human fasting, which I won't pontificate there. What about grooming? How often should we groom our pets?
Depends on the dog. So, my daughter has short-haired big dogs. They get baths occasionally. I've got the spaniels. My 2 younger ones pee on their front legs all the time. They get bathed a lot because they sleep with me.
Yes.
So, you just want to make sure like the grooming is more than just making them look good or smell good. Mm-hmm. Grooming is checking the body nose to tail, feeling for lumps, bumps, cuts, anything, especially if you have a thick coated dog, you kind of want to know what's going on under there. Same with our cats. Like just running your hands over them every day is a really good way to find out that there's something going on, especially if you have a long-haired animal. Like feel their ribs. Are they suddenly losing weight that you didn't know about? Or has their waistline disappeared and, oh my God, all of a sudden they're really fat? So, grooming is a lot more than just keeping them clean and making them look good. It's also checking them, lifting up the ear flaps if you have floppy eared dogs. Like, is there anything going on in there that I should know about? Use all your senses, touch them, smell them, see what's going on in there. So there's, lift up the tail. You'd be amazed, especially with dogs that spend a lot of time outside in the summer. Every veterinary clinic in this country gets animals every summer that are infested with maggots. There's no way your animal should be infested with maggots, but it's, and some of these are house dogs that, they're swimming in the people's pools. And part of the problem is, like, we see it in Huskies, Malamutes, Golden Retrievers that are really thick coated, and they never get dry because they're swimming in the pool all the time.
Oh, yeah.
And then they get these horrible, horrible skin infections under there, and you don't realize it's there until you smell it. It's like, well, you probably should have been checking them every day.
Yeah.
So, grooming is a lot more about, what's the body look like, making sure everything that is, like, one of my cats, we have 2 indoor cats that are very old and they don't come out of hiding very often. And I came out one morning and I'm like, what are these blood spots on the floor? And so I was like, well, it has to be from one of the cats. And so I picked up both cats, and one of them had a toenail that was overgrown and was grown into her pad. I was like, well, that's bad on me. Like, I didn't check this cat's nails in a long enough period of time that it actually grew into her pad. Like, slap me. That was, bad on me. But that's why it's important, even with cats, that we're checking and we're making sure. Like, if you've ever seen a dog with really overgrown nails, they start to walk really funny. And so then that causes strain on their tendons and their muscles and their legs. It's like, people who women who walk in really high heels all the time, causes a lot of strain. And so we need to be checking for those things. So, grooming includes keeping the nails trimmed at an appropriate length.
Well, on that note, what about lipomas? How do you feel about that?
Lipomas?
Yeah.
So lipomas are fatty tumors under the skin. They can be anywhere on the body. They are basically areas of toxins that the body is walling off. So it's not normal fat, even though it's a fatty tumor, it's not normal fat tissue. It's toxins being walled off. I have a podcast that was done with Rita Hogan, who is the canine herbalist. And in that podcast, she actually talked about what herbs you can use to help shrink lipomas. You can also use acupuncture, can be very effective for helping get rid of them. But what I will say is, when you get away from ultra processed food and you're feeding your dogs and cats, cats don't make lipomas as often, but people can make. My husband has one. People can make them, but they're literally areas of toxins that the body is trying to isolate. But they can become huge. I mean, I've had dogs with watermelon-sized lipomas, and if they're large enough and in an area that it interferes with mobility, like in an armpit or under the back leg, then we'll go in and we'll take them off, because they're interfering with the ability of the animal to be mobile. Otherwise, if they're on other places of the body and they're not interfering with anything, you can let them sit, because 99% of them are benign. But with correct feeding and herbal therapies, plus or minus acupuncture, you can actually get them to shrink. A lot of people will say to me, oh, I took my dog off that ultra processed food. I put him on this, new diet without all the carbs. And we got, cleaned up their lifestyle, got rid of all the chemicals in the household and in the animals, and the lipomas are all shrinking.
There you go. It does kind of really go back to food. 2 more questions, or just on my lab file list, but the repairing ACL, TPLO, for the dogs, do you have a hot take on that? My Cleo is my athlete. Well, they all are, but both repaired. And now I worry about arthritis. But would you have any
So
there?
Interestingly, when we look at studies on dogs that have them repaired and don't have them repaired, they all get arthritis, whether they do or don't have them repaired. And so, if you're a surgeon, to cut is to cure. So of course you want to do surgery on it. But it's going to get arthritic no matter what you do. My daughter's dog had a TPLO done on one side. I actually, because I did a lot of senior care, My office manager had a beagle, had heart failure really bad, blew out an ACL. Couldn't do surgery on it. The dog was too old and had, and not that they're ever too old to have surgery, but with her heart, she couldn't have surgery. So I said, all right, let's take her and get a brace made for that leg. So we sent her to the specialist to have a brace made for the leg. Dog ran, walked great with her brace. A few months later, she blew out the other hind leg. Most of them will. 75% of them, if they blow out one, they're going to blow out the other. The way we prevent them from doing that is weight management, acupuncture, and chiropractic. You can prevent the other one from blowing. So my office manager's dog blew the other leg. And I said, okay, you're going back and getting another brace. So she had 2 braces. And after 6 months in her braces, the legs healed. We took the braces off. She was fine, ran around like crazy. So they don't all need surgery. The bigger the dog, the harder it is, but a really good brace. So we're talking, these were, $1,000 braces that were specifically made for that dog. So they're molded to the dog's leg. You can make huge differences and a lot, and I say to people, well, $1,000 for a brace is a lot better than $6,000 for surgery.
Yeah. Plus rehab and medicine, all that. Yeah.
And
the trauma of it.
Yeah. So we do find that a lot of these animals will do just fine with a brace. You need to find somebody, like we had somebody up in Pennsylvania. My practices were in Jersey, and we had somebody in Pennsylvania. It's a company called My Pet's Brace. And, they were just so like we sent a lot of animals there for different braces for different things. And they're, it's tailored to the individual. So that, if you're going on Amazon and going, oh, I need a brace for his stifle, probably not going to do the same thing. Right. But, when we kind of go that extra mile and say, okay, well, I want to try this. The other thing that we started using in practice was things like stem cell therapy, PRP, potentiated platelet therapy, prolotherapy. Like there's so many other things that we can do rather than going in there and putting in a bunch of hardware and breaking bone and moving bone and, all the crazy things that the orthopedists like to do. There are a lot of other therapies that can be used. So it's worth doing a little research and kind of looking at, well, what else is out there that might work for this?
Yeah. Amen. It's so funny because that's exactly, I just interviewed a great doctor on stem cells because I have ACL surgery. I swear Cleo and I, my oldest dog, are like the same human. We have the same thing. So yeah, I know it's a weird, she's definitely they're all pieces. They say your dog's like your personality. I'm like, I have 3, so it's one for each one of my personalities, but that's so wild. Are these dog beds out here that are like hundreds of dollars? Are they worth it? Like the really nice ones?
Some are.
Okay.
It just kind of depends on what your dog needs. So like for senior beds, to have some like the waffly ones or to have the memory foam, it can make a big difference for them. They make some that, now have heat in them or they have cooling in them. And that's one of the things we talk about in Chinese medicine. Like, is your animal too hot? Are they panting all the time? Are they drinking a lot? Are they trying to lay on the air conditioning vent? Or is your animal cold? Are they curled up in a little ball? Do they want to be under the blankets? Well, look at that and say, okay, I need a heating bed or I need a cooling bed. They can be very, very beneficial, particularly for the really large breeds. So one of the things we would see a lot in large breeds like Great Danes are called elbow hygromas. These are the dogs that your whole house is tile and hardwood. And these dogs, when they go to lay down, they go whoomp instead of going gently. They don't do it gently. And so they end up causing traumatic damage to their joints because there's no padding there and they are going down on hard surfaces. So having something softer for them, yes, absolutely worthwhile.
Okay. And that's kind of what I said. Like you said, mine are in my bed. So I'll probably be sleeping in the dog bed before they do.
There you go. Well, then you better get a good big dog. Actually, I had one of those humongous, because at one time I had a 125-pound dog. And I had one of those huge memory foam dog beds. And it was in my office at the vet clinic. And after the dog passed, the bed stayed there. And if I was at work and I needed a nap, dog bed.
I believe it. Yes. I mean, some of them are that nice. Like they're nicer
Yeah.
than like the mattress I have on my bed. But it's, it's so worth it. But yeah, that's, they literally, I even have grounding sheets, which is a whole other podcast for them. So we do the most. I'm also in the business, so we get exposed to a lot, but I love the correlation between the two. I have so many more questions for you. We can get into it, but please go check out what Dr. Judy has on her website. My final question for all my guests that are all incredible, when I say varsity humans, you've done a lot of things. You've seen a lot of things. At this point in the game, what is success to you?
Oh, success has changed a lot for me over the years, and I've actually really been examining this lately. And success for me is being able to give back and seeing change. Because so often what we are teaching people for their pets, they then examine what they're doing for themselves. One of my best stories, I had a client brought me an older dog with cancer. We worked with the dog for a year or so. The dog finally passed, and I didn't see them for about a year. They finally got a new puppy. They came in, and I was like, this name looks familiar, but I don't know this person at all. And so we went through, what to do with the puppy and the vaccine schedule and whatever we were going to do. And she's like, you taught me so much. And I'm like, why do I know you and not know you? Yeah. And she pulled a picture out of her wallet and she said, this was my husband and I when we got married a few years ago. And I was like, you don't look anything like that. And she said, yeah, after we did all that for our dog with cancer, we looked at each other and said, why are we not doing this for ourselves? Mm-hmm. And between the two of them, they lost over 200 pounds. And they were going to the gym and they were cooking healthy food, all because I taught them what to do for their dog.
Yeah.
And so, for me, success is how many lives can we change? How many pet lives can we change? How many human lives can we change? Because people who have animals like me, I'm an empty nester. I see my kids all the time. I see my granddaughter all the time, but they don't live with me. I'm not caring for them on a daily basis, but I do have all these animals that I care for. And they're my family. And I want my dogs to live to be 20, and I want my cats to be around for 30 years. And I know that everybody else wants that too. And so how do we make that change? And when I see people making changes, that is success. When I see people, the light bulb go on. Like one day my mother said to me 30 years ago, I need you to bring home more of that monthly flea and tick stuff for my dog. And I said, Mom, do you ever find fleas or ticks on your dog? And she said, no, and I don't want to. It was a light bulb moment for me. I looked at her and I said, oh, you think this stuff repels the fleas and ticks? It doesn't. I said, you don't have fleas and ticks. You don't even need this stuff because you've never seen them because you don't have them. This doesn't repel. And that was a light bulb moment for me because, I didn't realize that that's what most people think, that this stuff repels. No, it doesn't. So, a lot of times people are just doing what they're told because they have ideas like that. Like my dog, if the veterinarian says, no, the only good food is the ultra processed kibble, you go, okay. Yep. And you don't know to question it until a light bulb turns on. And so the more light bulbs I see turn on, the happier I am. And
Amen.
That's success.
Yes. I'm so with you. And it is they're our babies. It's our lifeline. I can get emotional even thinking about how much I care about my dogs. And you want to do the right things, but just like the human industry, it's money and marketing and fear and a lot of things. So please go out there. Dr. Judy has so much intel. Go dig into her website, the podcast on specific things. Everything we touched on is an entire podcast in itself, but I know we want to take care of our animals. I do think they are our soulmates and they are the purest things on earth. So we got to do right by them. So start questioning a better way, advocate for yourself, and everything you're doing for them, please do for yourself as a human being. You got to be the right leader. So take care of number one so you can take care of them. I want to give a thank you to our sponsors, Colorado Clownfish Swim School, swim lessons and water safety training for all ages. They believe in life skills through sports. So go waterproof your family today. Our very favorite Plantiva, developing products you can trust, delivering results you can feel. Check them out at plantiva.com. They're rooted in science and work like magic. I love it. They're like the human conversation of what we're talking about today for our pets. I should actually probably align you guys, but go check out Dr. Judy, naturallyhealthypets.com. They are giving 50% off of all of her books on that website. TNT50 is the code. I will, of course, have it in the notes. Dr. Judy, hit us with any website handles, anything else where we can find you.
Almost everything is Dr. Judy Morgan's Naturally Healthy Pets. We are on all social media. We're kind of everywhere. Check it out. There's just a ton of information. Like, you could go down that rabbit hole for a very long time.
Yes, amen. And it's so needed. So here's to positive change for humans and pets alike. This podcast will be wherever you get your podcast. We'll, of course, have the video on YouTube. Take care of yourself and each other. And of course, all of our most precious animals. Dr. Judy, have a great day. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining Turmeric and Tequila with your host, Kristen Olson. Tune in next time, and don't forget to subscribe on Apple, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen.